Hey everyone, so I want to dive into Bitcoin in a minute and ask the question, could we potentially have seen the low this weekend after we broke the low of $20,000? So let's go into that today. If you like that and that sounds good to you, go ahead and drop me a like down below. Subscribe to the channel to keep up to date, because you know me, I am watching these charts every day like a hawk and looking for those bottoming signals and those areas at which we may see massive reversal points. So let's get into it. Now, I do want to say that I still think that this is a good long-term buying opportunity, which is why I have been buying in at $22.8 thousand, and my other buy was at $20.2 thousand, and I got a bit of a buy order this morning at about $19.4 thousand. Okay, and I'm just chipping away in dollar cost averaging into some of these key levels with the cash that I have available on the side at the minute. But what I think is happening here is we got this descending triangle, okay, at the bottom of this parabolic move, and this really looks like we may be seeing some signs of a potential bottom at $17,500, because this pattern here looks very low volume, very easy to break to the downside with that momentum. And at the minute, if we draw this down to the hourly time frame, because this is the only way that we can see what's really going on here, is we're starting potentially to really start seeing a bit of a floor for Bitcoin. This is which is what I'm trying to tell you, is you want to look out for some bottoming patterns towards the bottom of this parabolic move to the downside. So we made this move at $17,500, went back to the upside, retested this area, and then we broke this key level at about $19.45 thousand, okay, and we're currently retesting this region. And if we can retest this region, okay, and successfully break the highs of about $20,000, where there is a lot of low volume at this area, we just get our VPVR. Yep, you can see that all the low volume is at exactly 20,000. So we know that price doesn't like to hang around here for a long time. So if we can break $20,000, I think there's a good chance we can reclaim this $20,000 to $22,000 and then start to gain a little bit of support and close prices up above here, okay? So you can see that just the nature of this pattern, the way that it's starting to form a little bit more of a double bottom and W pattern down the bottom here, that we might be looking for a little bit of relief here, because we have dropped a lot. We've dropped about 45% in about 2 to 3 weeks, okay, which is absolutely mammoth for Bitcoin, and has typically represented some of the most generational best buying opportunities for Bitcoin. You don't know exactly where the bottom is going to be. Maybe we come back next week and we undercut some of these lows, but I do think that the bottom is pretty close. Now, just so we can get a little bit of clarity with what's going on in the short term, you can see that on the 5-minute chart, where the area that we broke down, which was the 20,000 area, that was really key. You can see this massive, basically God candle down to the downside, okay? And we've really started to form a little bit of consolidation. But as we started to create these lower lows over here, and bottomed out at $17.6 thousand, can we start to see some market structure which may indicate to us that we're starting to get the signs of a reversal back to the upside? Over here we didn't. When I start to see these descending triangles, okay, to the downside, what we're seeing here is that when we see this first parabolic move to the upside on a short time frame from 17.6 up to about 19.5, when we retraced over here, we tapped into this order block, didn't get the support, but the first real base order block that we wanted to see support from would be this area at about 18,000, and you can see that here, okay, this was the area from the this was basically the downside move before the up candle that broke the market structure at this bottom, was where we saw the first support here. And then you can see again we're starting to create market structure at the bottom, okay, with a little bit of an inverted head and shoulders here, okay, and then again broke that, and you can see that just the way that the market structure is starting to shift to a little bit more of a bullish time frame, that this is definitely going to be more likely to be a bottom at $17,500 than 20,000 was. And you can see again that as we're breaking higher, what are we doing? We're retesting this area at about $19.3 thousand. okay, because we broke the market structure, but you wouldn't want to be, buying any breakouts, because that's not what we do. We look to buy on any short-term pullback. So once we got this breakout over here, we're looking to pick up support from this area, and you have this 5-minute, 15-minute as well order block that you can see. Okay, so here's the order block. Okay, just at this one red candle is enough of an order block to be picking up support at these levels. So if we start to, see that reversal here, and then from here we push higher than $20,000, then I definitely think we break $20,000. I definitely think that we move into those mid-20s, which could be quite a nice little gain for Bitcoin of about 10% at least, to try to see if it can hold these levels at $20,000 and really start to build a little bit more of a base of support down here. I still think that Bitcoin has a good chance of that, and maybe we repeat something that we saw in 2014, where maybe we come up to this level that we broke down from, okay, and maybe we are able to hold this area, or maybe if we don't hold this area and we fall back to the downside and create another lower low, maybe we look for a low somewhere just beneath that $17,000 level, or retest some of these lows. So definitely the scenario that I'm looking out for on the short term for Bitcoin. Also, it does look like we may have a 5 wave that may be in here, where we've got the 1, the 2, and we've got our 3 down here on the 15th of June at $20,500. Went back up to 23, and this is our impulsive capitulatory move back to the downside at about $17,500. So definitely something that I'm looking out for here. And check this out, right? So on the left hand side, we have our 2018 bear market breakdown, which was our final capitulatory move, and that floor that we had that people thought we're never going to break at about $6,000 is pretty similar to this level that we have over here on the right hand side, which is current price levels between about 2022 and 2020, and we created this 30,000 floor support, and we're currently in that capitulation move to the downside, very similar to what you can see on the left hand side. And you can see and if we just drop this down to the 4-hourly time frame on the right hand side, and on the left hand side we drop that down to the 4-hourly time frame as well, okay, there are quite a few similarities to be seen here. Firstly, our level that we broke down from at $5,000, okay, is about 40%, okay, which we made it down to the low. And at the minute, the level that we broke down from at $30,000 to where we broke down to on this weekend is about 40% as well. So it's really, not too dissimilar in terms of percentage drops, okay, and in terms of the actual market structure. And then if we also take a look at the way that we moved down back in 2018 on the left hand side, okay, we've basically broke down, and then we're starting to, the selling is starting to basically round off, and we might be seeing something similar, like I said, on the right hand side as well, where we're getting a little bit of the selling just starting to dry up a little bit, and we're starting to get some of these green candles come through, where buyers are willing to step in at these discounted prices. And if we also take a look at some of the fractals of the patterns that we got in 2018, you can see that we got some of these descending triangles right at the bottom of these parabolic moves, just like we got this weekend that we broke down from, okay. And then what did we do back then? We created a little bit of a low, as we did here, retested some of these lower regions, and then moved back to the upside. So maybe from here we basically moved back to the upside at about $22,000, and we potentially make a lower low, or at least start to consolidate and move sideways, because this whole move for me was definitely a lot sooner than I was expecting, and I think this move was a lot more impulsive and sooner than what anyone would have been expecting. I would have been expecting $20,000 or so towards maybe as a real low point, not anything around the $17,000 mark. And if we were to retouch and retest those $14,000 levels, maybe that occurs a little bit later in the year, would have been my base case. However, that I'm also open that the bottom may come in at some time between now in June and sometime in October. So that's the date range that I'm really looking out for. But let's see if we can find some of these patterns, okay, that might start replaying here. So, maybe we get something similar where we move up here and then start to accumulate, or maybe we move up and this is the low, okay, definitely a possibility, because remember, where also are we, okay, on that macro time frame is that we're still within the week, okay, for Bitcoin, where it's made those sort of key crossovers. And you can see that when we get this 20-week and 50-week crossover moving average on the weekly time frame, we typically always come down and hit the 200-week moving average. So while we're still within that week and time frame, it's really easy to forget, you know, that because price is so volatile and it's moving so quickly, that the principle of, you know, we tend to see a bottom in and around this time, it might still hold true. So you can see that that's happened and before, and, you know, marked out those key bottoms twice before in the last 2 bear markets. So definitely a possibility that might be happening at the minute, especially with, you know, how fast we've actually dropped. But, you know, we might still potentially finish above $20,000 this week. I don't think so. But if we do want to do something similar to what happened in the last couple of bear markets, I am looking for Bitcoin to at least reverse in the short term from this 200-week moving average in the next week or so. So it needs to get above it pretty quickly in the same way that it did, you know, over here back in, you know, 2020 March. So yeah, we want to see if we can see some strength and support from the bulls at the 200-week moving average, because historically, when we get the crossover and when we get that touch of the 200-week moving average, we typically see a bottom within 1 to 2 weeks on Bitcoin. So let's be patient and bear that in mind for where we're at in the current market cycle. And if we take a look at the level that we broke down from at $30,000, where is the first weekly order block for Bitcoin below that level? It is exactly at this level that we tapped into at about 19.5 and $16.3 thousand. So for me, this is the level that we really broke out from before we made our parabolic move, and we're currently testing this area again this weekend on the weekly dump. So I wouldn't be surprised, again, this looks like a little bit more of an obvious area to see a bit of a you know, reversion to the mean, and for Bitcoin to start to move back to the upside, where, you know, the confidence has been completely decimated. If we just drop this down to the daily chart, you can see that on the left hand side, I was hoping that at about $24,000, this was why I thought that we would initially get to $24,000 when we were way back up here in the 50s and 40s, okay? But it does seem that this looks like, you know, the order block that we're currently tapping into and seeing if we can hold support. And you can see that the consolidation and the price action here is far more significant, because this is a retest of the all-time high, and it's also just a bigger range of price for Bitcoin to find some support on. So let's see if we can, you know, tap into those weekly order blocks and get some support from this level. But I think the low that we get this week and next week is going to be very important, because I think there is a good chance that Bitcoin might still be seeing a bottoming in the next week or two, because as we've spoken about on the channel before, when we see the 20-week crossover on the 50-week, that always results in a touch of the 200-week moving average, or a pierce of the 200-week moving average, which typically signals a bottom for Bitcoin within the next week or two on that signal. So the way that I'm interpreting the charts is that I think we potentially see a low in the next week or two, okay? And that low could very well be at these levels that we've hit this weekend. If we start to delve any lower than what we got this week, then, you know, look out for this order block that we've been speaking about a little earlier than what I would have been expecting. But you know, if we move any lower, look for that next block at 13.7k, and if we don't, there is that possibility that maybe we bounce back to the upside, and maybe we make that little bit of a move back to the downside later on in Q4 of this year, and maybe we either retest this area or we move down to the 13.7 area at later point in the year, maybe October, November, December. But like I said, because there's no guarantees of where anyone knows where the bottom is, that's why I have been buying a good chunk over here, and I'm happy to buy another good chunk over here at about $13.7 thousand if we get that move later in the year. You know what to do if you got some value from the video. Like it, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon to make sure that you stay up to date with all my videos on Bitcoin, because I'm going to be coming out with a lot of videos to make sure that we are, you know, keeping a good eye on the bottom and where that might be, and to help you guide through this volatile and crazy market as best we can. So if you're with me on that, go ahead and do that for me, and I'll catch you lot in the next video.